Okay, let's talk journalism for a second. As you can probably tell, I dig it. I always have. This is me as a kid pretending to be a news cameraman. Sick pumps, right? Okay, I digress. Journalists work around the clock. Thank you for the close-up on the pumps. Journalists work around the clock to bring you the information that you need to know. And they spend years studying the art and mastering their craft. I'm not describing myself. I was a red carpet correspondent, and I'm just a lucky dude. But while we are at a national outlet here at MS Now, for a lot of people, journalism starts much, much closer to home. Local news is a critical part of that ecosystem. I saw it up close and personal when I covered the destruction of my hometown in the greatest wildfire event and costliest one in American history. But it's also facing such a crisis. According to the nonprofit Rebuild Local News, an average of 2.5 newsrooms are shutting down each week in the United States. And here's the frustrating part. Pew Research Center says 8 in 10 Americans say local news matters to their community, but just 12% pay for subscriptions. There is still some hope, though, and it might be coming from a really unlikely place. Gen Z.
I'm a 25-year-old who just bought my local newspaper, and here is my first edition. We got the redesigned front here, with a little sidebar of all the teasers. We got some mix of stories, some crime stories. I think all of us need to be reading more print newspapers, more local news. If you do that, you're going to be more informed, and a more informed society is a more educated society, and it's always good to know what's going on in your local community, and you get that best from reading your local newspaper.
How awesome is this? You heard that right. A 25-year-old journalist bought his hometown newspaper. About 3 years ago, Evan Newton was an intern at the Monticello News, a small paper in Jasper County, Georgia. It's home to about 18,000 people. Now, the dude is running it. Today, Newton is the proud owner and publisher and editor of that very same paper. He is one of the youngest newspaper owners in Georgia. And you might be wondering, where on earth does a 25-year-old get the money to buy a newspaper? Well, we don't know the intricate details, but Newton has said he got a great deal, was what he said, because the paper's previous owner wanted to keep it locally owned. And if he hadn't agreed to purchase the newspaper, it sounds like a corporate buyer would have been the next option. And look, it's not necessarily a great time to purchase a local paper. And Pew, again, one of their studies from a year ago shows about 39% of Americans say their local newspaper isn't doing well financially. That's the vibe. But Newton is betting on something bigger than numbers, the idea that people still care about what is happening in their own backyard. And that is a lot of responsibility for one 25-year-old. And right now, he's the only full-time employee at the Monticello News, with help from 2 part-time staffers and community contributors and an intern as well. But Newton says he's up for the challenge. And maybe that is exactly the kind of optimism local journalism needs right now. I am so stoked to have joining me right now Evan Newton, owner, publisher, and editor of the Monticello News. Congratulations. This is so awesome.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jacob. I really appreciate it.
Can we just start with your story? How did you end up the owner of a newspaper?
It's still one of those things that I'm trying to process myself, but I think in large part, right, it's one of those things that I think all came together in a perfect storm. You know, like you said, I was an intern here at the Monticello News 3 years ago, and I wound up going to take another full-time job in a neighboring paper, and I was there for 2.5 years, and I stayed in constant connection with my former boss and the former owner, Kathy Mudd, and she just approached me when it was around April, and she basically said, Evan, I'm 70 years old and I'm ready to retire. And she came to me with a great deal, and here we are.
You just corrected me like a real daft journalist. You know, Monticello News. Did I get it wrong? This was Monticello, not Monticello. Very polite way to do it. Thank you for doing that. Your first printed edition, it featured a layout, right? A redesign and some news stories. It was cool to see that video, almost all authored by you. Take us through the first week. What was that first week like?
Yeah, so the first week, I really wanted to make a splash within the community, and I knew one of the ways I wanted to do that is through a new layout and design. The paper hasn't had a new design in around 20 years or so. And I wanted to use my design experience and really uplift the paper. And so I decided to do a light blue colorway just for the entire brand in general. But then also
we dig light blue here.
Yep, that's right. I wanted to also just get like a good mix of stories, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And so I think that first edition really is a good balance of that. We've got the wanted man in Walton County that happened. There was a 3-county chase that happened there. And then there was also the opening or soon to be opening of a Domino's Pizza, which doesn't seem like a super big deal in the grand scheme of things, but there's only 3 chain restaurants within the city limits of Monticello. And so Domino's being the 4th is a pretty big deal. So those are 2 of the stories on the front. And then we're also too are revitalizing our local sports section, which has been a big hit so far.
Thin crust, extra crispy for me if I ever come through. I meant what I said when I watched my hometown burn down in the Palisades at the beginning of 2025. It was local news that provided definitionally a public service, telling people where they could find particular things on what street, what houses were still standing, where first responders were, literally the names of people that you're not getting from public officials standing outside who people don't trust, or certainly not the national news that can't go that deep on a intricate level. But being online for some of these publications was sort of critical to that. You talked about in the Georgia Recorder that you still believe that surviving this decline of local news, I think is how you put it, is a combination of the old and the new. How are you striking that balance, particularly like if a big, very consequential event were to happen locally?
Yeah, so this to me, it's pretty easy in the sense that here in Monticello, there is still a need for that print paper. People still go out and buy their paper religiously, and I'm very lucky to be in a community that does that. But at the same time, I understand that people my age are not necessarily going out and buying the print product anymore. And so we have to meet people where they are. And that's through both the website as well as social media. And so I've been, using that to our advantage, both of those things. And it's paid off well, obviously. We actually gained, I believe, over 2,000 followers through all of our social media platforms just over the last 3 weeks. And that has also resulted in quite a few subscriptions as well. So I think it's just striking that balance of knowing to meet people where they are, which in this age is the digital age, but also at the same time recognizing the importance of the print product that is still, I believe, very prevalent in our community.
Well, hopefully we give you a few more followers. Everybody go follow the Monticello News. You are kicking ass, man. Evan Newton, the owner, the publisher, and the editor of the Monticello News. Good on you. Stay in touch with us. We want to know what's happening over there.
Will do, Jacob. Thank you so much.